1909, Rangers fans and Celtic fans united on the pitch to fight the police, to fight the fire brigade, to fight ambulance workers, and to burn down the turnstiles at Hampden, because that's where they felt as if they were getting conned, having to pay too much money to watch replay after replay in the Scottish Cup final, where they thought that the rumour was it was going to go to extra time. The game was going to be played to a finish, as it was on Sunday. So all it was, I think, we saw the Celtic supporters coming on the pitch at the end of a Scottish Cup match, a Scottish Cup Old Firm game that had the extra time. And we thought, oh, it's a reenactment of that. Hands across the divide. Let's kind of link up. And certainly the criticism from the police force in the past few days would lead to think that we should have got together and united and just teamed up once again for a wee party, a wee Old Firm party, where everybody's on the same page against the man. But no, I think there's just a bit of confusion, a bit of cross wires about that. The 1902 Ibrox disaster. Celtic fans celebrating the Ibrox disaster on Sunday. But the first Ibrox disaster, 1902, actually took place. It's a Scotland-England game, but it took place in the Broomloan end of the stadium, where they were overcrowding on Sunday. And it makes me think that perhaps all that rushing down onto the pitch at the end and a bit that's already overcrowded, that's the kind of thing that caused Hillsborough and what have you. But celebrating that, maybe celebrating it far too literally, almost celebrating disasters in football stadiums that killed people. But it makes me think that perhaps we've just seen the records attendance again at Ibrox. A wee bonus to take for Rangers supporters, kind of anoraks, part-time anoraks like myself. The game against Hearts just a few weeks ago, what was it? There was the biggest crowd at Ibrox since John Gregg's testimonial, basically since the old bowl-shaped Ibrox with the terrace, and it was brought down and replaced with the three goalpost style stands that we still have in place just now before Willie Waddle's rebuilding of the stadium to make sure there wouldn't be another Ibrox disaster. But I think since last season, where we did some work on the Copland to get our new facilities for wheelchair supporters in there, that slightly expanded the capacity up to 51,700. In the game against Hearts, where Hearts had the little corner section between the Broomloan and the Sandy Jardine stand. Sandy Jardine played for the Jambos as well. They had that little bit in there, so it doesn't need that much segregation. That let it be the biggest crowd that had been at Ibrox under this new kind of capacity, and therefore, because that capacity is bigger than it's been at any point since it was rebuilt, the rebuilding work that started in 1978, that's the biggest crowd it's been at Ibrox since, the new Ibrox, the rebuilt Ibrox, the biggest crowd since the 60,000 or 65,000 that turned up at John Gregg's testimonial in 1978. So that's quite good. But I think with Celtic having, it could be anything up to an extra 1,000 Celtic supporters in there. You just look at that stand. I know it's been covered in the Rangers Review, etc. But it was playing. They do it at Motherwell as well, and the Motorola stand. The Celtic fans like to break in and overpopulate the thing, and it's a real kind of atmosphere. It's a frenzy. It's a mob. This is great. It's mayhem, as Rory Hamilton kept celebrating it on Sunday in his commentary for Premier Sports. So I think there could have been upwards of at least an extra 1,000 Celtic fans in there. So even though there's bigger segregation, there's more capacity, more attendance lost because there's slightly bigger segregation, slightly bigger chunks of blue seats that are unpopulated to keep the fans apart. Celtic overpopulating it, that might be the first Ibrox crowd to touch 52,000. In decades, so that's a wee thing to bear in mind. Also, other bonuses for the Rangers supporters is that we won't have to pay for semi-final and possibly a final ticket for this is a season in which we've already paid for 12 competitive games at Ibrox as supporters. There's been 12 competitive games played at Ibrox that aren't on the season ticket, and there's only like 18 or 19 maximum games on the season ticket, so it's getting to the point where you're actually paying for as many games as your season ticket covers when going to Ibrox. And if you go to Ibrox in Hampden the way I do, I don't think it's okay. I don't go to away games. I just watch away games in the telly. I don't have any great expense. It's just Ibrox and Hampden for me. You're paying almost double, and you've got to pay for your MyJers membership. And then if you go to Hampden, as we did the League Cup semi-final, that's extra as well. So at least we're probably going to save about £100 between now and the end of the season. It certainly lets me, I think it's my wife's holidays at that point in time when the semi-finals of the Scottish Cup are on, so I can just stay away and enjoy the holidays without having to feel guilty about rushing back home. So that's some bonuses there. Sorry, folks, I'm being light-hearted again, and this about a very serious subject. I did the same on Sunday. Well, I didn't really. I need to apologise. Post-match reaction outside of war-torn Ibrox on Sunday, the last pod that I put up here. And it is just a post-match reaction. It's your immediate thoughts, your immediate emotions. It's not heavily analytical, properly forensic, and like that, if any of my pods ever are. But standing outside there, and I was talking to Heat at the moment, the place is just strewn with bodies, severed heads and limbs and that everywhere around Edmondson Drive and that. So I probably wasn't thinking straight. But I have to apologise because I got a few things. I think in the heat of the moment, I got them a bit wrong. I said that Baillieston Juniors had won the Junior Cup at Ibrox, and they haven't. They haven't, because there was a fella in the Celtic end, or somebody in the Celtic, had the big Vatican style flag, the big Vatican flag with Baillieston right across. I thought it was quite a lovely incongruity there, not to insult the good people of Baillieston, but just it's not a Vatican flag. I've been to the Vatican. I've been to the Vatican, I've been to Rome and all that, and how do we walk around in there, and it's just quite, Baillieston. You don't expect that to be associated with the Vatican, but obviously it is through people in Baillieston who believe in God and that kind of stuff. So I saw that across there. So I made the wee joke. I think some Baillieston Juniors definitely won the Junior Cup at Ibrox. The Junior Cup final was played at Ibrox, and I'm sure one of the goals was scored in there. But what happened is Baillieston, the Junior Cup final was played at Ibrox 1982, 1983, 1984. I looked this up afterwards just to double check, and it's 1982, 83, 84. 3 years in a row, the Junior Cup final was played at Ibrox, and Baillieston lost 2 of those finals and didn't score a goal in any of them. But they'd won the Junior Cup in 1982 at Hampden after a replay, beating Benburb, who are practically Rangers. They're just along the road. Benburb just. So I think I was going to get myself mixed up. So I want to apologise for that. And also, I was talking about the whole casual scene, the grown men with the gear on wanting to go fighting after the football and how when I was younger and I was my teens, I first thought, oh, that's kind of quite good. That's hardcore Ranger support. I'll join the ICF and all that. And then I realised, number one, I can't fight to save myself, and I'd had to do enough of that just to exist in Ardrossan where I was growing up. It just seemed a bit of a waste to do it in the football. The football's a wee day out, when I come from. In my mind, it's a pleasure to go to the football. It's a wee kind of, it's like a social occasion. It's the idea of going fighting at that. I know most social occasions in Scotland, weddings, funerals, Christmas, all involve fighting, but it just seemed a step too far. It just didn't feel right at all. So I got myself out of that. But I was talking about how the casual thing, the planned fighting, grown men getting their best clothes on to go and meet each other and phoning each other, sending other wee text messages to arrange for a meeting to get physical with each other up in a back street or something like that. That's quite gay. It's very gay, isn't it? And I didn't mean gay in that kind of school playground sense. Oh, you're totally gay, like homophobic, basically. Being totally homophobic and saying that gay is a bad thing. I'm nothing against that at all. If consenting adults want to do fisting, that's fine. It's the fisticuffs that I was having an objection to. I would rather folk did go about fisting each other and just getting it on, as long as they're enjoying it, as opposed to fighting generally. So apologies if that come across as a bit homophobic. And I'm sorry. It's just I've been watching the news Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday, and I just can't believe that flare that the Union Bears threw into the Brimlin Road stand when the trouble started. I can't believe it started that fire at Central Station and the art school. That's unbelievable. John Swinney has done a statement. John Swinney, the First Minister of Scotland, he did a statement the other day, and it made it pretty clear to me that this was the worst thing he's ever had to deal with. And I think that's the handy. I mean, in 2010, at least was actual violence took place. A proper pitch incurred, and fans were on the pitch at Ibrox so not a lot of proper violence actually happened. Of course, it was mostly what it would be you normally call it pavement dancing, but they weren't on the pavement, they're on the pitch dancing, if you like, kind of standoff, because they kind of rushed them and then rushed back, and the police, the stewards hunted everybody pretty sharp. I think the whole thing lasted about 2 minutes, but first time I've ever seen that at Ibrox, first time I've ever seen fans on the pitch that way at Ibrox, and I've been going for 49 years. It's so annoying just now. The 2nd of April 1977, I went to my first Rangers game, my first game at Ibrox. So it gets to 2nd of April, I can start saying 49 years, and that's just a big build-up. I think we're playing Dundee United on the 2nd. It might be the 2nd of April. We're playing Dundee United at Ibrox, or is it the 3rd? But that's me. That's going to be officially 49 years of Rangers support. But I'm just can't wait to get to the 50 years. 50, because then I can say, 50 years I've been coming here, and that's the worst I've ever seen it. Well, it was. It's 48 years and like 50 weeks I've been going to Ibrox, and that's the worst I've ever seen in terms of a pitch incursion. In fact, the only other time I think, apart from people, individuals have run on the pitch every now and then, one of them tried to punch Scott Brown because he was goading and inciting Rangers fans every single time Celtic did anything at Ibrox, but one guy eventually flipped and ran on the park and attacked him. You can't condone that. You can't condone that. Remember the game in, I think it's 85-86 season when Hearts went really close to winning the league. Eventually we started the season really well, ironically, when it actually became our worst season ever. The only season we've lost more league games than we've won any league we're in, any division. It's the only time it's ever happened to Rangers. But at the start of that season, we were going quite well up the top of the league, and I was getting a wee bit of feeling. It was getting behind Jock Wallace in his second reign in the team, and then Aberdeen, who were the team at that point in time, they came to Ibrox and they beat us 3-0. And it was supposed to be, this is the day we prove we're back. We're really going to start winning. And it just went to pieces straight away. Craig Patterson and Hugh Burns get sent off, I think both in the first half. Aberdeen just took us to pieces and just gave us a bit of a lesson and put us back in our place, so to speak. And I think it was just trouble broke out. And it was probably getting directed towards the referee or maybe the Aberdeen bench or something like that. But trouble broke out in the east enclosure, and the police waded in, and it kind of spilled onto the trackside. I think I don't know if the fences were still there. I think the fence may have still been there at the front of the east enclosure. That some fans ended up spilling onto the trackside and maybe end up on the pitch. That was the only time in my entire life supporting Rangers that I'd seen any kind of notable number of Rangers fans going on the pitch because of trouble. But even then, they were only attacking the Aberdeen supporters or something like that. It was. So that's it. That on Sunday is, even though an old man like myself, an old Ibrox regular, that's the first time I've ever seen that many Rangers supporters being on the pitch, looking straightforwardly, looking for trouble or threatening violence. So it's a day of first order, and so no wonder, of course, the First Minister had to say something, because back in 2011, when he wasn't talking on Russian TV, being a total asset, Alex Salmond did a standy-uppy at the podium State of the Nation address at Butte House, live on Sky Sports. Live on Sky Sports News. I remember watching that State of the Nation address about the fact that Rangers and Celtic, who were meeting 7 times that season, didn't get put out in penalties. There was no penalty shootouts in the Scottish Cup back then. Rangers played Celtic at Ibrox. We drew 2 each. It went to a replay at Parkhead, and Celtic won that. And I think 2 Rangers players get sent off, and Ali McCoist and Neil Lennon kind of pushed and pulled each other at the end of the game. And 60,000 folk stood and watched. Oh, Neil Lennon and Ali McCoist are pushing each other. All right, that's that, and went home. And that required a State of the Nation address because it shone Scotland a really bad light. Fucking bullshit. And that was, so the First Minister, again, in the best tradition the other day, was able to come out and get a really easy bit of distracting publicity, considering all the other real shit that's going on in Scotland. But talking about condemning what's happened. That's disgusting scenes, horrific scenes, whatever, horrendous. He gets paid to say stuff like that. We pay to get into those games, And I saw they had the chief constable. Who was she? She was Joe Farrell, and there was the chief inspector. She came out on Wednesday, and then there was the chief inspector. I think it was Emma Croft. She came out on Monday. I think she's in charge of the Glasgow police or whatever, or the Glasgow area or whatever, or she's second in command. It's Police Scotland now, I know, but I think she came out and said we were great. We did a fantastic job. It's not on us, It's all about the fans there, and he didn't do a fantastic job at all. In fact, I think he wanted it to go wrong so you can just make sure no away fans go to these games in the future. I think it suits me as well. To be fair, I don't want to see. I didn't want to see away fans back at these games. I just would rather these games died a death altogether, if I'm quite honest with you. But that's what she was saying. So you got her coming in, and then you Joe Farrell. She's the No, it's that she's the chief inspector, and she was at a Holyrood committee. It seemed like, and she was saying, "It's just here we are. It's Monday evening. No response from either club. There's probably a response from Rangers and Celtic right now. That I'm recording this podcast, but still no response from either club at this point in time. Although Martin O'Neill, who's quite a big representative of Celtic, he had a few things to say. Just their fans were just tiptoeing through the orange lilies, and then these animals, these evil 12-year-olds started attacking us. But so it's apparently it's Rangers and Celtic didn't say anything. And there was a Reform MP, a Reform MSP was in this committee, and they were actually showing him on Reporting Scotland last night as if they cunts have got anything to do with anything except they're genocidal maniacs. Reform, they shouldn't be allowed on television, far less anywhere near a parliament. These are just absolute head cases. The most venal people in all of society are Reform MPs. It's a payment plan. They will kill millions. They're going to destroy the NHS even more than it's already been destroyed, and they're getting the people that it will kill to vote for them under the cover of racism, which it's quite obviously that's right in there with the Old Firm game, isn't it? That's the same kind of theme. So it was good. The First Minister was in there, and he was making big comments about this stuff. And this time there was actually people on the pitch. There was actual violence, an actual threat of violence, major violence, which didn't happen. There was violence happen, but not major violence. So at least there's a kind of justification there, and that's what this podcast is all about: justification. Saturday night, I watched the last 2 episodes of Small Profits, the Mackenzie Crook thing. It's not as good as Detectorists, and that's probably the worst thing you can say at Mackenzie Crook right now. It's not as good as Detectorists, but nothing is as good as Detectorists. One of the best pieces of television I've ever seen, Detectorists. It's absolutely gorgeous television, but in Saturday it didn't. Small Profits, a follow-up to it, and although it's a bit twee, that theme tune, it's not very believable. The theme tune to Detectorists, it's proper folk. The guy's a good folk singer. It's done to perfection. That has right into the deliberately twee stuff. The Small Profits theme tune. It's like a 12-year-old lassie trying to sound like she's a 50-year-old jazz singer for the 40s. So I hate that kind of stuff. That wasn't doing it any favours. Michael Palin was absolutely terrible. It's just, here's Michael Palin. We've got him in there. But it's essentially a nice thing, and it means really well. And it's a lot of it was very well done, and touched on some really good themes. I think it's all about just letting people have the wonder that we all had as kids. Let's get back to that. Really, and you should never judge people. That's quite appropriate. It's quite an Old Firm game the next day. It's quite appropriate. You never judge people until you really know them. And of course, the guy stays next door to the main man in Small Profits, and he's a proper big. He's been radicalised online in various ways, like most of us have these days. But it's about the innocence we've all lost, and it focused on beautifully. A lot of Easter eggs throughout it as well. But ironically, the biggest Easter egg was about Christmas and the room he'd kept, and you're thinking, if his wife or his partner only left him 7 or 8 years ago, that he's preserved that room like that's a room for the 1970s, maybe early 80s. So I don't know, did his mum die? And he's kept. You wonder what's going on there with that room, but it turned out it's because he was trying to recreate. He recreated that old look, the look being Christmas 1979. And then it's all about Action Man. The men started getting involved. The policeman who's really cynical. Oh, he hadn't got the Action Man helicopter at that age because he would only be like 10-year-olds at that age. It's really, it knows its demographics, Small Profits. It's gone for the people who are kind of between, we're middle-aged, but we still want to be like kids and that kind of thing, but we're old parents, dying parents to look after and blah, blah, blah. And so Christmas 1979, that's folk my age, and Christmas 1979, I got Action Man. I got the DUKW as well, the amphibious vehicle, now does all the tours in Boston. And out the waterway, I got that, the Action Man DQ. That was that the year I got the Scorpion tank. I think I got Action Man a couple of years, but I found, I take the not book burning thing a bit too far. I keep every book I've ever had, and that behind is my Action Man annual from 1979. The very year. That's the Christmas he's recreating in Small Profits. The photograph, the Polaroid photograph of his partner's perfect Christmas, and he's recreated it. And of course his brother-in-law, common law brother-in-law. He's not actually married to her, but he's like, I didn't get. I always wanted Action Man, didn't get it, and you're thinking that's why he's a bit cynical. about life. That's why he's a bit of a nasty character, because he didn't get the love, he didn't get the toy that he wanted, he didn't get the full magic of Christmas 1979. You know, I was 10, Christmas 1979. I got Action Man, and I remember crying the next day. Christmas Day was brilliant. Got the Action Man stuff I wanted. Got the Action Man. It was the grip hands. I don't think the eagle eyes as well, but definitely it was the Action Man with the grip hands. And obviously Christmas was magic. Can't remember what we did, but it was Boxing Day, and my mum, my Catholic mum, and my Protestant dad are both lying sleeping, are both sitting. He's sleeping in the chair, she's sleeping in the couch. So they've been up really late and all that or whatever. Christmas morning, whatever, made a few drinks on Christmas night. I can't remember what happened, but it's next day, it's Boxing Day, and it was the light of the television, but also probably Christmas lights, maybe fairy lights about the place, but the main lights were on in the living room, and I remember thinking, this is absolutely magical. This is, I love this. Me and my sister are watching something on the telly. Mum and Dad are both zonked out. I'm only mentioning their various religions. I know I say this all the time, but I know when it comes to that, I'm going to say a lot of controversial stuff, or things that people will deliberately skew into being controversial if they want to hate Rangers supporters. And I know it becomes very, oh, that's what yous are like. Yous are all like that. The idea that anybody completely lives in a bubble of Catholicism or Protestantism these days is, I find, it's be quite a feat to manage that. But I'm not in any way alone in having a quite. I'm not Christian. I was never baptised in any religion. I went to a non-denominational school. I'm a Rangers supporter. My mum is Catholic, so her dad's Catholic. My dad's Protestant, but his dad's Catholic. So it's a whole massive mix. I'm not trying to have a go at anything on that kind of seedy basis. But I was sitting there, and my Action Man, I took the hand off him. I took the grip hand come off him. This is magical. This is great. I remember that feeling like they were talking about in Small Profits, 1979, Action Man Christmas. And then I pulled off his grip hand, and it could go back on. It went back, but I couldn't get it back on at first. And I'm like, I've broken it. I've ruined it. Now, I think maybe whatever was making Mum and Dad sleeping in the afternoon in front of the telly, maybe that was at the back of my mind, is what was really kind of underlyingly upsetting me. But I could hide in Christmas. I could feel joy, through Christmas. I could get the warmth of all the toys and what have you. And you just remember the wee plastic, the wee kind of white, translucent plastic stump that came out from his arm after I'd taken off the grip hand. And I think I started crying. And that might be the last time I ever cried because of something bad, other than maybe my grand dying. That's the last time I kind of cried. And I remember my mum woke up. She went, "What's the problem?" I'm like, "Action Man, it's just like Christmas is ruined. The whole facade is ruined. It's just a toy." I was thinking at 10.5 years old. Whatever. And she's like, "Oh, I think she said something along the lines of, it's just a toy. Grow up," or something. I went back to sleep. And I think that there is why, a few months later, 5 months later, I'm watching the cup final, because my other Action Man type thing was Rangers. That was one of my other things that I was right into. And we get beat, and the Celtic fans come on to celebrate. Just to celebrate. Not to, but they seem to run up to the halfway line, but it's to celebrate. And so the Rangers fans come on to retaliate, as Rory Hamilton would have it when he's dividing both fans at the end of the game the other day. We come on to retaliate, and there's a full-on battle. And that kind of becomes, that's your Action Man replacement. That's a bit nasty. It's not very nice, but it's a passion, that it's something that you love, and it feels more real. Do you know what I mean? Me crying that Action Man's hand come off and getting told to grow up and shut up by a mother woken from her slumber. That's the old firm. That's Scotland. That's what powers us into our little personalities. Then you add a heavy dose of kind of crippling religious bollocks, Catholic guilt, Protestant work ethic. It's a fan-dabby-dozily healthy combination. Something's got to give. And when it gives, it won't be pleasant. So, hey, here's a really unpleasant environment for you. The Old Firm. And we'll ensure the footballing import of almost every Old Firm game is ramped right up to the kind of max to meet the simmering self-hatred of both sets of fans, and the grinding, unrelenting regularity of the fixture itself will ensure that the fans are always ready to explode. And when they do, bingo, added bonus, rollover, you then have the chance to double down on the self-righteousness and the moralising which already infects our backward-wee society and is channelled into and through this fixture in the first place. Political football, the Old Firm game, absolutely. Political distraction, damn right it is. But best of all, it lets our entire society split into a game of three halves. No, wait for this is good, but a game of three halves. The Old Firm lets our entire society split into a game of three halves, a bit like first half, second half, and a half hour of extra time in the penalties. It's maybe even the wee riot afterwards to take it up to the full the 45 minutes. It's a game of three halves. It's a bit like Rangers are evil in one half and Celtic are innocent in the other half, and then the third half is tisk tisk tisk. What can civilised and right on society do about these two sides of the same coin? Neither third of that kind of pie chart of hysteria is realising it's the very thing we all use the Old Firm match to get away from. It's what you're criticising it for is the stuff you're actually using it to kind of hide from, even or perhaps especially those who hate the Old Firm. Isn't it fun? A temporary relief, at least, to bandy about the word cancer in Scotland in relation to something that isn't actually the real cancer in our society, which is cancer. Waiting times. The preponderance of cancer, the fact it's absolutely everywhere in Scotland, that we're hitting, despite, with pro rata rates, but Western European terms, we are just always up the top of that. The cancer list, the number of people in our population who've got the NHS, the treatment of cancer, that's why Reform can go and fuck themselves. I don't really give a shit about anybody but and Reform has got to say about anything, far less a game I was at and he wasn't. Or maybe he was on Sunday, but it's the causes of cancer, the prevalence of it, and how we deal with it, drug deaths, NHS waiting lists, alcoholism, obesity, I'm part of that kind of stuff. Children in poverty and a boat, a ferry, £3.2 million of extra repairs required after it's only worked for a year. Thank fuck for the Old Firm. A very Scottish fantasy, a Caledonian Star Wars, a kind of properly earthy unreality, the Old Firm. It's a fiction that has just enough verisimilitude and the perfect dosage of nuanced observation to make its escapism feel like a truly viable alternative to reality. It is, in fact, to Scotland what Detectorist was to Britain, the Old Firm. It's a drama so good to make you think the characters are real and the concerns are only contained in those characters who are, in fact, everyman characters. And even still, they're not truly representative of all of society. Celtic are the one club in support which we don't outnumber in Scotland. If they start coming for us, getting on our pitch, they can reap the whirlwind of a few dozen 12-year-olds squaring up to them with balaclavas on. The Celtic fans looked absolutely terrified, didn't they? They looked terrified, as we've been hearing from Brian Graham and what they absolutely the one good reason for a Rangers fan to watch back what happened to if like me, you record games like this, you always record games that you're at, so you can watch them again. You come in the hope of reliving a glorious game, a glorious moment for Rangers. I'll watch it back. Having recorded the game, and you always, for a cup game, you're always setting it for extra time and penalties as well, putting the extra hour onto your recording. One good reason to watch it back is if you've heard Brian Graham, football player who was in Celtic end with his 10-year-old. I didn't get my first Old Firm game until I was 14. Even I wasn't allowed to go to them then. But you heard as pish prostituting his child to demonise Rangers. It's sick as fuck. If you heard his read his crap comments the other day, watch it back. They celebrate after the Rangers fans have been on. The Union Bears have been on to attack the Celtic support and not really getting to them. That's not really actually engaging with them. The police and the stewards got in between them and more in the nick of time. Celtic fans are all pissed. It's close-ups to the Celtic end the whole time. They're all pissing themselves. They're all enjoying their smiles as wide as the Clydes and that kind of thing, and twice as smelly as they say. There's Tosh McKinley in there. The only time he's ever enjoyed a victory in an Old Firm game. He's in there. They're all in there really enjoying it. They're smiling and laughing away. They are the opposite of terrified. Brian Graham didn't seem to be. He said he was in the front tier. He didn't seem to be terrified at the overcrowding that was taking place on there because all the Celtic fans that had broke in. When they're rushing to the front at the end with the penalty, surely that's causing a surge, that's causing danger. That didn't seem to bother him. But what was it? All the 10-year-old kids, he went into the concourse, and that's where all the 10-year-old kids were sheltering. They were hunkering down, terrified about this. Won't somebody please think of the children? And the doors were getting banged and it must have been Rangers supporters that were coming in to get them and all that. I never heard anything so pathetic in my entire fucking life. And this is why I feel the need to just do a podcast. This is your Fat Eck. If Scotland's Chief Constable, Chief Inspector, First Minister and entire mainstream media are going to have their say about the copyright warning, disgraceful scenes and the aftermath on Sunday, and I don't think these disgraceful scenes on Sunday that we're talking about was a reference to Scov Olsen's second half corner, although I want an inquiry into that. What the hell happened to Scov Olsen's crossing on Sunday's game? That really needs to be looked into. Then I suppose Scotland's most obscure and obese podder, I'm duty bound to give you my official response. There's certainly been a few folk getting in touch since Sunday who, despite being a long-time listener, this is the first time I've decided to get in touch to express my disappointment that you didn't seem to condemn the Rangers supporters. These people seem to have decided this would be the first time they'd actually write in to the pod. I deleted most of them because they're obviously at it, but this was the time they elevate me to the status of major spokesperson for Rangers, after I hadn't outright condemned our wee ultras for attacking the Brimlin Road on Sunday at full time. It's just a bloody diary that I'm doing here. It's a personal diary. I speak for absolutely no one but myself and never have. This isn't even a Rangers fan media pod. It's a pod that happens to be by a Rangers fan. Extra reaction to the Reaction podcast, coming to you in association with Gersnet. Check out Gersnet every Friday 9 p.m, every Sunday 9:30 p.m, live on the Gersnet YouTube channel. Coming to you in association with Gersnet, and I'm also coming to you in association with, also sponsored by, whatever the modern equivalent is of tomorrow's chip paper. What's tomorrow's chip paper now? You don't get chip paper. You don't use newspapers to wrap up your chips now when you go to the chip shop, and I'm old enough to remember that, yes, aren't we all? And go in there, and it's tomorrow's wee white polystyrene tub that folds over, and there's always a chip sticking out, and you'd always pull that out and have that when you're walking to the car or whatever, or onto the train. I don't know what is tomorrow's chip paper, because I suppose the idea there, the point of that is it'll all blow over. There'll be something else for everybody to get up in arms about in 2 seconds' time. So it's more about the news, how the newspapers, the stuff that's plastered across the front pages of the newspapers will get taken over, and they must have been so annoyed. Reporting Scotland and all these folk were so annoyed. You get a riot at an Old Firm game in Central Station gone on fire that night, and it's pretending they gave a shit about a building in the town centre, and how old it was, and all that. I loved that, but I used to get after it, and I looked in and see that, fucking shut up, didn't he? Just the same way they're known anyway, disgusted at what happened on the park on Sunday. They actually enjoyed it. It must be really annoying for them to have the both things happen at the same time. They could have got a week's copy out of the two of them, and then they've happened at the exact same day. It's really annoying, but I don't know what it is. What would you do now? It's tomorrow's app. It's tomorrow's app's the headlines on your app that you have to scroll right down to and get through all the kind of advert type things about this is a great cure for fungus on your toenails. This, if you can't do this, it means you've got cancer. If you can answer these 20 questions, you've got an IQ better than most NASA scientists or something. That they kind of thing. You get through all that to the other headline, yesterday's headlines. That's what it is. That's what it's going to be. I don't know, but I feel as if I need to have my say. My name's Alec Anderson, crossing alone the United Ferry with the one coin for fee. Whom in the port of Letha waiting count you to find, not me. Brisk fond lackey to fetch and carry your true sick-hearted slave. Expect him not in the just city and free land of the grave. Yeah, we're cracking out the Shropshire lad here. We're cracking out the houseman because we need that kind of, let's get realistic. Let's get into the nuances of life. Let's not get hysterical and talk a lot of pish. Let's deal with this shit. We need a bit of the houseman there. Terence, this is stupid stuff. Terence. Let's for a wee bit of that. My name's Alec Anderson, and I'm here just to do a special one-off pod to give you my 2 cents worth about the riot, the post-match riot. I predicted a riot. I certainly did predict a riot. I knew it was going to happen. I knew Celtic support was too overexcited about it. I knew Celtic's attitudes would, as a club, be the same as it was when the women's match at Ibrox, which we had to ban all Celtic fans because Celtic wouldn't ban the Green Brigade. Can we just remember, the Green Brigade have been banned by Celtic from Parkhead. They're in there on Sunday at Ibrox, probably breaking in, as so many of them did, going through the turnstiles. I don't think. I think there's probably Rangers fans have gone in, doubled up at the turnstiles or all that. I don't think we're kicking in any doors to get into the place. They've gone in there and it's them wreaking their shit round about our stadium on Sunday that has been a major incitement and has led to the bother. But Celtic take no responsibility for it because it's at Ibrox. It suits them absolutely perfectly in the current climate. I hope the new Celtic board, lack of Peter Lawwell, maybe end up with some common sense and some. I hate the phrase common sense. Everybody's common sense is completely different, but some conciliation in there. Trying to be a bit more objective, a bit more calm about the whole thing. Both clubs will hopefully take a bit of responsibility onto themselves, but. Remember the women's match, Ibrox and Celtic, their supporters had to get banned because the Green Brigade were going to turn up and start wreaking havoc at the one arm of the sport, which is so good in terms of the football itself, but it's best known. I would say the great thing about going to women's games is it's just a proper family occasion. It's the safest branch of football you can possibly attend. And the Green Brigade are going to turn up at Ibrox because it's so, they can't afford to police it properly. It's so badly policed, almost on purpose. The women's game, we're having an Old Firm game at Ibrox, the women's game, and Celtic, they're not getting involved. Green Brigade are going to turn up. We have to ban also. And the Celtic players are wearing T-shirts saying, football's nothing without the fans, the Jock Stein quote and all that, because they've been martyred. It's big bad Rangers again. I'm sick of this characterisation of ourselves. I was triggered. Well, me, you might get martyred. You might get kind of hysterical about it. I was at the 2016 Scottish Cup final. Hibs, when Hibs, the final whistle went in that game, I expected a pitch invasion. I almost thought that's the one time a pitch invasion was really warranted. I was around for the decades that Hibs were getting slaughtered for never having won the Scottish Cup since 1902. And which is the first Ibrox disaster that took place in the Broom one. They come running onto the pitch, and I thought that's the way, especially the way that cup final was won. Hibs coming back from 2-1 down to win it late on, the style in which they won it, just the years and years have been slagged about it, and Hibs don't win that much considering they're a massive support. That's fair enough. But very quickly, when they come on the pitch, I saw that they were attacking our players. And you realise it's thousands of people against 11 Rangers players and maybe a dozen or so Rangers staff that are also on the pitch because it's a full-time whistle, but it was instant. And they sprinted on that pitch. And then later, you saw the photographs, again, the belt thing, this is some wahoo in the Celtic end on Sunday, just defending himself by leaning to get out of the way, get over the Celtic fans who are actually being attacked by an old Rangers fan who comes in for the side onto the track and has a go at them. But he's whapping them with a belt and all that. And it was the same thing. There was a guy, a Hibs supporter was hitting, I think it was it Lee Wallace or whatever, with a belt. And suddenly it was Rangers fans, Lee Wallace was a grass for turning at the referee and going, we're getting attacked here. If Lee Wallace had hit the guy back, he'd be the worst person of all time as well. But I genuinely remember thinking, and this is even 10 years ago, I was far too fat and far too shite at fighting and all that to have any involvement in that kind of stuff. But I was thinking, one of those moments where it's just, oh my God, I can't live with myself. If I don't go on the pitch and get involved here, I think they're going to kill our players. I actually thought they were going to kill our players. And it became clear the players had got off once I'd managed to run down one step of the aisle, and that was fine. But then the Hibs supporters just kept coming. They just kept coming. That exuberance soon turned to, let's get in your faces, come on then, we want a square goal. And Rangers supporters were perfectly happy to oblige them. And this was a year after Motherwell, who had the honour of being the closest any club has ever come to relegating Rangers. No, they didn't get us, we didn't get promoted. So that's tacitly, it's like relegating us back into the division we're already in. I don't know, but it's the closest anybody's ever come to kind of relegating Rangers. I was at the home leg of that playoff. And then the second leg, of course, because there was actually going to be a decent Motherwell support of that game for the first time in however many centuries, they gave us a tiny bit of the stand, the Motorola stand, the two-tier double-decker stand at which when they first built it, they were trying to sell 2-game season tickets to Rangers and Celtic fans for going along to 2 games. This was one of the times they didn't want us in there. They just gave us a small allocation, and that emboldened the Motherwell fans who invaded the pitch to come over and start attacking the Rangers supporters in there in small numbers. Aberdeen, I mean, that's like 20 odd years ago, and it was Big Lorenzo. hits that fantastic volley from outside the box for the only goal of the game, but there was a bit of crowd trouble and Rangers fans spilled onto the track. I think it was about overcrowding or something like that, and the old guy, I feel like he's probably the same age as I am now, but he seemed like an old guy back then, certainly probably early 70s, and the Aberdeen casuals come jumping onto the track and punched him in the head and all that, and he went back. He went back for a square goal with these guys to hit them back. But it's Celtic have been winning everything in Scottish football for 15 years, whatever it is now. We've won 3 trophies in the last 15 years. 3 trophies in 15 years. Celtic should know how to deal with victory. This wasn't a big deal. This is the way things have been going on Sunday. It's a very exciting game. Very, very exciting game. Not a classic in terms of moments of skill or whatever, but it was a pretty intense match. Celtic, whole lot of injuries and what have you, and they managed to come through the game. Penalties is always very dramatic, but they just wanted to invade the pitch to goad us. There was no, oh my God, we've never experienced anything like this in our life before. This is amazing. No, it wasn't. He did it all the time. He beat us in penalties League Cup final last season. They got an amazing record against us, Celtic, in the Cups this century. Never mind. I think that's the 6th time in 4 years they've put us out of cup competition. Penalties, extra time. That's Parkhead, Hampden, Ibrox. There's nothing there they haven't experienced. It's actually Rangers, considering the size of our support, the import we have in Scottish football. We've won 3 trophies in 15 years. The slagging we take, other teams are like, oh my God, you've won 3 trophies and you've only won 3 trophies in 15. We've won 3 trophies in our entire existence, say St Johnstone. We've won, 3 trophies. Never say, other clubs, whatever. But it's the amount of attention we get, the amount of focus on Rangers, and that's part of that's part of the fun of the affair. We actually did quite well, I think, to not be invading the pitch. It's not about us losing the game. That didn't help. But I think it was just a step too far. This is an intimidation too far, and they needed to be stopped. The police and the stewards didn't seem to be stopping the Celtic fans getting on the pitch. I don't think that's completely accidental, as I say, but they weren't stopping them getting on the pitch, and we know from recent experience, that they won't stop coming. They wouldn't have stopped coming. They just have get further and further up the park. The Celtic fans were really emboldened by the size of the support they had. They know there's not 7,500 battlers at Ibrox. There's maybe there's 7,500 battlers, whatever, but most of us were getting out of the place. I never at any point shouted encouragement to the Union Bells. I never at any point said, "Yeah, on you go." In fact, from the moment when they scored the final penalty, Celtic, to put us out, from that moment until I was actually out in the street, the only thing I said was, "See you later, Davy." That was it. Just and Davy saying, "See you later." That was it, as Davy took his daughter and away they went up the vomitory. It's because of where I sit, and I'm right down the front of the main stand. I'm towards the aisle, but there's so many more rows behind me. You know how it works getting out of a stadium, the vomitory is way up behind you, so you're going out at the back. It's a bit so I could even get out if I wanted to get out, but you saw something was going to go off. So I'm just watching it. And I thought, I'm going to do a podcast about this in 2 seconds' time. As soon as I get out here, I've got to do a podcast, so I need to know exactly what's happened. So I stood and I watched. And I have to be honest. And we can have the whole kind of philosophical thing about if not condemning something is tacitly approving, tacitly condoning it or whatever. It's not pleasant. It's not what I'm proud of. It wasn't about pride or anything like that. It was just, as I saw the Celtic fans coming on the park, and I saw it wasn't getting dealt with, I must admit, I was relieved when I saw the Union Bells coming on the park, and I was relieved when I saw them running the Celtic fans off. Just the threat of Rangers, the Union Bells going up there, kind of getting the Celtic fans back into their stand, because it won't stop. It wouldn't stop. That's probably enough to stop. The way it's been portrayed just now, Celtic fans just innocently celebrating, and that's how it's been portrayed on Premier Sports as well. At that point, people wouldn't know about the overcrowding, they wouldn't know about the vandalism going on, glorifying or celebrating the Ibrox disaster in the Broomland Road stand. And I don't like getting into all that, because we do the same kind of stuff. It's the song sheets from both sets of fans on Sunday was disgusting. That's why I hate the Old Firm game. But I said this, I knew the minute the allocation was given out to Celtic, the minute when the game was played, we were going to be playing them twice in a week. I knew it was going to get to this point. I knew it was going to escalate to this. I even tried in my preview pod on Saturday ahead of the game to be kind of, it wasn't the Celtic fans being stuck away in that corner for the league game the other week. It was a bit it was a bit sleazy. Didn't look right. So get them full on behind the goal like it used to be. But even then, I knew this wasn't like what it used to be. It was already being portrayed as a victory for Celtic, a kind of moral victory. And the fact that it's actually the SFA telling it it's 20%. Rangers could probably have still said, no, we're not having any more than 800 or 1,000 Celtic fans at Ibrox. But that would have gone against the 20% kind of agreement in terms of away supporters for the Scottish Cup. The police weren't telling us not to do it. Celtic certainly weren't telling us not to do it because it's become this political thing between the two clubs. So Rangers are like, right, there's no thanks to Rangers for relenting on that. But Martin O'Neill and everybody you're talking to mainstream media is talking about how amazing it is. It's a great thing to have a massive away support back at these games. Away support back, but Celtic fans were starting to portray it as a victory. They free Brimlin. They're going to free the Brimlin. It's just, this was always going to fucking happen, and I'm afraid it's like, I don't know, going for a shit. It's one, and I don't like talking about that kind of stuff. I don't like things to get a bit scatological. I was worried that Small Profits was getting a bit scatological when I was watching that on Saturday. A few episodes of it. I like that kind of stuff, but it's an easy analogy to make every now and then. And it's like that kind of thing. It's not something you talk about. It's not something you want to revel in, but it just needs doing. It's a necessity of life. And, it happened. When I was 16, 17, no, I was 18. I was 18 when I thought, nah, I'm done with this. They kind of, and I'd only dally and stuff. I'd only kind of played about with it for, I don't know, a few months or something, the whole casuals thing. 18 years old, young man, in search of identity, in search of a new action man for adulthood. And I liked wearing the gear and all that, doing the whole casual thing, but I just didn't feel right. And then one day, January 87, Rangers game at Fir Park against Motherwell was postponed at the last minute because of the weather, and the kind of top boys, ICF, and that were all. I wasn't one of them. I was just a wee Wayne, basically hanging about in the train station, hoping they'd say something cool. And they said, let's go to Parkhead. Celtic were at home to Hamilton Accies, and we just beat them in New Year. The game as soon as stands in the ball and all that. We just beat them at New Year, and this was going to be the season. Rangers were winning the league for the first time in 9 years. Celtic were in a really bad way. Their fans were really critical of them and blah, blah, blah. But the whole thing was that our game at Motherwell was cancelled, so let's go to Parkhead and cause trouble. Said, okay. So walked along there, and we stood on the Celtic end. I mean, don't get me wrong, right down that wee corner, the furthest away bit of the old Celtic end. This is the old terrace Parkhead, the furthest away bit from the jungle, the bit closest to the main stand. But we stood, we were all paid in. We were all paid to get into the Celtic end at Parkhead. And then, just as the game kicked off, we all started singing the sash. The police saved our lives. The quick intervention of the police, and probably the fact it was a relatively small crowd, because things wasn't a happy ship at Parkhead at that point in time. That's probably what saved our life. But if I'd been kicked to death that day, or punched to death, or whatever, stabbed, I'd have deserved it. That's on me. That is on me. I knew. I was still old enough to know what we were doing, why it was incendiary. And if you do stuff that's incendiary, you expect. And I remember getting the police. So I've been on the trackside. I'm not talking about this in any kind of po-face sort of way, obviously. I've been on the trackside at Parkhead. I've been on the other side of this and getting marched along in front of the old main stand at Park. Well, it's still the same structure, and getting shoved into the wee sectioned off away support bit in the old Rangers end at Parkhead, which was Hamilton. Hamilton Accies fans applauded us into this. I think they thought we were Hamilton casuals at first. They couldn't have heard what we were actually singing. And I think a lot of Celtic fans thought we were Celtic casuals because there's a bit of tension going on between the old Scarfers and casuals at that point in time within the Celtic support. I think casuals was seen as a kind of Aberdeen thing. A lot of that in the Rangers support as well. We just, because it was first at Aberdeen and there were horrors who would go up there to play Aberdeen for a few years. They hated to see it catching on amongst the Rangers support. Same thing was happening to Celtic. I think at first they thought we were Celtic casuals, and then they heard what we were singing. And as we walked past the main stand, the police escort along the main stand, we started singing Happy New Year, Happy New Year. And I'll remember those folk in like their 70s running down the front to spit on us and stuff like that. They hate, and I don't blame them. That's just, you'd gone to Parkhead and singing the sash and what have you. And then I remember being stuck up in the Rangers end with the Hamilton supporters. And it turned out the game was 8-3. It finished 8-3 to Celtic. So it was the highest scoring Premier Division game of all time. I think highest aggregate score. Not that I saw all of it, but that's why I got a wee anorak hit when I was there as well. I was there because I think we started singing "God Save the Queen" just before half time. I just remember this big sergeant. There was, I don't know, there was a few dozen of us anyway, and this big sergeant who looked like he could take absolutely every one of us in a wanner just come strolling right up. Right, fucking done with you, get out. Just get out. Just sent us onto the streets. And luckily, most Celtic fans were still wanting to watch the rest of the game, or else we would have got absolutely chiselled, and it would have been our fault. I would have taken the responsibility for that. If I'd been kicked to death that day, it was on me. I see and hear no one at Celtic taking responsibility for their fans even coming, overloading our stadium and then invading our pitch. I hear it being excused as over-exuberance and celebration, which, of course, doesn't just look like kind of sickening hypocrisy in the face of condemnation. It looks like a set-up, a narcissistic projection of the sickening self-image they sometimes get from Celtic fans as kind of happy-go-lucky innocence, purely there to revel in football joy and against big bad Presbyterian Rangers, only able to emote through violence because we're so spiritually repressed. It's so dangerous that this setup, this a condemnation of our pitch invaders. The condemnation of our pitch invaders is so much more prevalent than the condemnation of the Celtic pitch invaders, because we were only coming on the park to look for violence. These guys, the Celtic supporters, come on just get selfies with Martin O'Neill and selfies with the players and stuff like that. It would not have stopped at that. I think it's so dangerous in terms of kind of public unrest, because it's encouraging this martyrdom thing as well. We're just done celebrating. Our 10-year-olds are in the concourse and we'll be terrified, which I think is at the heart of the kind of thematic difference which created the Old Firm, or from which the Old Firm comes. Anyway, thanks for your time. Have I got anything else to say? I do have other stuff to say, folks. I don't know if it's just going to be me kind of getting on and on. But as I say, it was so much easier for the First Minister the other day for John Swinney to talk about Rangers and Celtic. He was absolutely loving it, to talk about how they did, rather than drug deaths, NHS waiting times, alcohol addiction, school teachers working all hours, child poverty, and the Glen Sannock's costing an extra 3.2 million. What's happening at Drussen Harbour? All that kind of stuff happens on a boringly daily basis, and often in the privacy of a home, or up a back alley, or in a wee council area or something like that, rather than live on Premier Sports with hundreds of thousands watching and all across the front of the Daily Record. So Rory Hamilton made a point of continually referencing the return of 7,500 fans to the Brimlin, the free Brimlin. It was painted as a victory by Celtic fans just getting an allocation. No gratitude to Rangers, as I say, because we were almost forced to do it by the SFA. So it's playing into the kind of IRA Liberators narrative. I know we do the whole kind of, we are the staunch Britons, and I know let's just be realistic about this. Let's just admit what's going on here. The whole thing of the free Brimlin is free Derry. This is what we're talking about. And I'm going to get him. I think he should be renamed Ryan Londonderry, who one of the two guys who scored a penalty for us in that shootout on Sunday. But the free Brimlin, it was painted as a victory, say, but Celtic for just getting an allocation. So I'm talking to the IRA, of course. It's this kind of liberation thing. It's a narrative of Celtics as liberators. Of course, it's the IRA I'm talking about, from Ryan's Daughter, or The Eagle Has Landed, or played by Brad Pitt in that kind of terrible Harrison Ford film. The romanticised freedom-fighting bohemians whose wit and love of life is too much for the dour Presbyterian black and tans with all our sexual repression. Now, to be sure, we just put all that sexual repression into our priests, and all our guilt into the confessional. So we can both do that kind of stuff. It's not the IRA who blew up children in Warrington, Omagh, in that boat Louis Mountbatten was on. I said I didn't want the full allocation returning to the Brimlin, and the song sheet from both sets of fans sold as a great advertisement for the game, a great atmosphere by the very broadcasters who would then turn on it the second it starts to go wrong. You've got to take some fucking responsibility as well. I just didn't want it's. The broadcasters, the prompt, the song sheet up to my knees in Fenian blood and all that kind of stuff. And I know there's long debates about how that's such a preposterous idea that I'd be up to my knees in any kind of blood. And I did that as well when I was a kid. I'm up to my knees in, black pudding maybe, but no any kind of blood. But there comes a point, you're using a horrifically sectarian term, and we can be objecting to the stuff there, the endless referencing to Huns coming from the Celtic end the other day. The death of Davy Cooper, all that kind of stuff being glorified by them. If we are doing the same kind of thing, I knew we bring out the bad in each other, and the Billy Boys comes out now amongst the Rangers support in times of kind of vindication and catharsis. It's brought out because it's hateful, so we acknowledge ourselves that it's hateful, that song, but it had largely disappeared until recently. And I think when you get this constant kind of pressure cooker, whether the two clubs, usually, well done Hearts this season, but usually two clubs fighting for most of the honours, and every meeting is do or die, and it's this squalid. I think the days of it being a social pressure valve are over. And Jock Stein talking about let's guys who are working together all during the week and getting a bit tense about the religious differences. They go to the game at the weekend and they shout a whole lot of nonsense across the terraces at each other, and that's it. It's out their system. It's healthy in a real world sort of way. But there's no more heavy industry, and there's plenty of folk still working manual jobs, but there's a lot of terrible manual jobs out there. But often the guys working in manual jobs, they end up being the best paid, There's no excuse for a lack of education on this front. Both sets of fans are pushing the transgressive button all day with their song sheets and their behaviours. By the end of the day, we have Celtic fans literally showing us there is no line for them. And it won't be until we draw it. They'll just keep coming. The full shocked reaction from Brian Graham, the Brian Grahams of the world. Why are players booked for taking their jerseys off in celebration then? Because it's seen as incitement, as provocation. This is a factor. And why is there any segregation at all amongst fans at every bloody football match in the world, every association football match in the world, except maybe it used to be the Merseyside derby. Even that's now got it. You've got the friendly, the Basque derby between Real Sociedad and an athletic club, but they find ways. Yous have started signing non-Basques, and they find ways of falling out eventually. Football's just that kind of sport. It's right or wrong, and we've got to do something about it. We shouldn't give up on it. We should try. There's definitely advances that can be made. It should become a nicer environment, but the idea that the Celtic fans are all total innocents and it's the big bad Rangers fans are reacting to absolutely. They just wanted violence. I've had this my whole life, in and out of Rangers. I mean, why did Celtic fans attack Gordon Strachan twice at Parkhead and Pittodrie when he was playing for Aberdeen back in the day? Because Gordon Strachan used to wind them up basically by beating them a lot, but also he would have a wee celebration in front of them. And our players, we thought we'd scored the other day, our players were celebrating in front of the Celtic and they were celebrating getting it up the Celtic fans. I'm not trying to claim any innocence on this, and that is the thing. There's people who are trying to claim innocence. Either all's fair in love or war, or we're all Puritans. The hit and run politics of Celtic, embodied in the kind of person of Martin O'Neill, it's cowardly in a way that only inflames, always inflames, and it's just part of the ongoing policy as a club from Celtic of othering us officially since we come back into the top flight 10 years ago. But they don't use the term old firm, the opposition, all that kind of shit. The world is full of political leaders who have absolutely no moral compass, to take zero moral responsibility, who only play to the galleries. If Celtic want to do that as a football club, then I don't want them back at Ibrox at all. This is why I always thought it was dangerous. Things had changed. Things had definitely changed. It could be bled back in slowly. Maybe you shouldn't use that phrase. As supports could get gradually bigger, but this was just asking for trouble the other day. The Rangers fans were launching a flare into the Celtic end. That's different from the pyro, obviously, that the Celtic fans set off in that overcrowded room at the start of the game. And when you watch the game, again, all I've heard about is Rangers fans throwing a flare into the Celtic supporters. I watched it back the other day, and I stood and watched it myself at Ibrox on Sunday, but I actually watched it back on telly. I watched the whole game back I'll get back on the actual football tomorrow, or on Friday, on Saturday, hopefully, on this podcast. But I watched the trouble again at the end. The base sets are lobbing their own. The Celtic support. The big irony of the whole Rangers Celtic thing, of course, is there's orange in the Irish, the flag of Ireland, which is meant that's the uniting. That's the thing. It's the white is the uniting of the orange of the north and the green of the south. It's a flag of peace. But the irony is, it's the Celtic fans that've got They've got orange flares at their games sometimes. We don't really do orange flares. It's kind of red or blue. So you can see there's an orange flare getting fired for the Brimlin. It's artillery fire, action man. They're firing the stuff back and forth at each other. The two of them are at it. I don't know. I think it's always nice. It's something that says happened so often with me in just my day-to-day life, my kind of social life. At weddings, funerals, christenings, it's always nice to be told you're the root of all evil by people who, by doing the very same thing, are they're abusing a couple at a wedding, a funeral or a christening or something like that. It's always some really well-meaning person. It's because the way I live my life, because I love talking about football. I'm right into the football. That's my action man of my adult life. If somebody at a wedding, I'll just try to sit at a table of strangers, basically, and somebody will come along and go, "Oh, Alex into the football. Oh, Dave, you're big into the football." Guy's a fucking Parkhead season ticket holder, Alex right into the football as well. But do you know the thing I find? It's people who do actually go to the football, people who are Parkhead season ticket holders, are more likely just to want to talk about football. And we'll know, we both know. So you don't get into that. You want to chat. And it's quite interesting to find out stuff about Celtic. They find it interesting to find out stuff about Rangers. Not it's somebody who's like goes to 2 football matches a season, tops, and it's going, I'm a fucking, I think it's because of the faults in their own personalities. And you get that kind of person at a wedding who'd find another reason to cause trouble, etc. But the fucking number of times, social occasions, Rangers support, they're a bunch of bigots, and you've got to sit there and take it, or else you're going to live up to their fucking idea of you as a troublemaker, and you're thinking, why is nobody saying you are a squalid little bastard for starting this kind of conversation at I've had it at funerals as well, literally, from members of my own family. Then Kilmarnock supporter, the worst of all. He's been liquidated. Ha ha ha. It's just what's uncle being cremated. And you want to get into this. So this is the kind of stuff that you have to put up with. I've seen this whole kind of coming on. We're just getting in your face and totally winding you up. Oh my god, I can't believe you reacted like that. That just proves that you're evil. I'm fucking done with it. I don't like to go on about it. I don't like to go on about it in these kind of situations. Well, if I was a Rangers supporter, I wouldn't go on about it either. You're fucking shut your fucking face. Weddings, funerals, christenings. Yes, there are Rangers fans doing the same thing to Celtic folk or fans of other clubs and being anti-Catholic about it, no doubt, as well. I've had the anti-Protestant stuff I've experienced as well when I'm leaving a Protestant is horrendous. But for years now, I've had to put up with this in-your-face shit from scumbags and social misfits who group together for strength, say the most disgusting stuff to me, and sometimes I'm in the company of my wife because someone nice immediately mentions, "Oh, Alex into football as well," and I know exactly the attitude behind the Celtic fans who advanced into our pitch on Sunday. Next time, it wouldn't be the 18-yard box. On Sunday, it would have been the halfway line if the Union Bears hadn't managed to come on, and I'm sorry if that's unpleasant, but as I say, I would take responsibility if I got a leathering at Parkhead for coming on the pitch, and I don't think anybody really. There's a few isolated incidents, but why are they wearing balaclavas though? They're wearing balaclavas, just desperation to find a way to. But is the fucking Celtic supporter walking about wearing, dressing like IRA bombers from the 1970s? You might think they're heroes, but I think they're the scum of the earth. These people, they're dressing like folk who wore balaclavas to ambush soldiers when they were on leave, or to set off radio bombs from fucking miles away from the safety of a bush or something like that. So I think we should leave all that kind of shit out of it. I predicted a riot. Sorry, folks. This is. Thanks for giving me your time. This is the Fat Eck podcast, the podcasting equivalent of Lucian Freud's Benefits Supervisor Sleeping or Jenny Savile's Strategy triptych. It's arty, really, really fat, and it's completely stuck in the mid-90s. Just can't get out of the mid-90s at all. SFA, they were straight in there with a condemnatory, excusing themselves statement. The Polis have been talking about us every bloody day. It seems the First Minister's been out there. Rangers and Celtic, I say they've probably made a statement as I'm recording this, but The official response hasn't come from Rangers or Celtic. It's almost as if we need to look into this shit, and find, rather than knee-jerk reaction, maybe a bit of kind of actual proper intelligence gathering about what's going on. Like maybe even talk with each other. Maybe both clubs are talking with each other behind the scenes to try and come out with a kind of united and sensible humanitarian type approach to this thing, get on the same page. Nah, I mean, Peter Lawwell's not there anymore, so hope springs eternal, but more likely it's a game of poker or chicken, or you show me yours. Just we want to suss out how the opposition is going to deal with it and respond appropriately. Martin O'Neill is a major Celtic employee, though. He's responded, as I say, I mean, it's an innocent celebration. I don't get it. And to be fair to Martin O'Neill, he's been called a sad Fenian bastard plenty of times at Ibrox over the years, and has never ever come out and complained about that. And that's a horrific thing to be singing to anybody. And he certainly, but he gets his own back. I would say we're singing at him last week. I wasn't, but it was being sung at him last week. Full volume when we were 2-0 up, and he had the last laugh then. He had the last laugh on Sunday as well. But he was also giving it. I just feel as if it was we're just celebrating, and then they're attacking us. The Rangers fan advisory board. Well, there was nothing wrong. They were saying, the Rangers fan advisory board. It was good. I enjoyed reading it. It was pointing out the evils of the Celtic support. But I think you've got to maybe mention some of the stuff that we did. That was what it wasn't saying. And it'd only be the singing and the fact that we did invade the pitch, and that it shouldn't happen. It just shouldn't happen. But we can explain why it did. I think will there be a Rangers allocation at Parkhead for the last Old Firm meeting, the 6th Old Firm meeting this season? Well, not if Celtic are playing to the galleries, and Police Scotland might rule it out this time anyway, and let Celtic and Rangers off the hook with that one. I don't know why, as a Rangers supporter, I do know why you'd want to go along to it. See, I've done that kind of shit myself when I was younger, but yeah. Kavanagh and Marathi, our owners, they might be selling up. Maybe it's all just become a bit too much for them. The weekend after Leeds United fans, Parag Marathi, the Leeds chairman, they are booing a break for iftar in the game against Man City at Ellen Road. It's happening, as we get towards nightfall during Ramadan, so the Muslim players on the pitch can get, there's a wee break for them to get some calories on board. That's fine. But they're coming out with this stuff at Leeds about how I think a lot of our supporters thought there was an incident with an extended break for Man City. The last time we played Man City, that we objected to. No, it was not during Ramadan. So they probably thought the same thing was happening again. They couldn't see, a lot of the ground couldn't see the big massive screen that we've got telling them it was a breakfast. They fucking knew. Half the folk, at least, that were booing that knew it was Ramadan. It was anti-Muslim. It was Islamophobic, I would imagine. But I think the weekend after that happens, the stoppage for iftar doing Leeds United, maybe British football is losing its kind of sports washing appeal for Kavanagh and Marathi. So big Andrew just hanging about in the director's box on Premier Sports, getting held back by a few boys. Don't go on. It's no worth it. Fucking smelly bastards. Bobby Sands, you can't. No, just want to go on there. But no, it wasn't. He wasn't getting involved. But maybe they didn't sign up for this kind of publicity, despite the profits that can be made from it. Who knows? I see the media could portray these games, they build these games up so they can sell them, and it's all about the do or die nature of these games, and they live off the fact the fans are so passionate, they call it. So basically they're just looking at us through a microscope, or with kind of surgical gloves on. To look at these, if they take the football so seriously, it makes for a great spectacle. We're all sitting in the sofa watching it with our dominoes and we're Budweisers. It's fantastic, isn't it? And they're praising the Union Bears tifo at the beginning of the game. The atmosphere that Union Bears help create. They're wearing balaclavas and that because they're being told that they're being told this is a passionate thing. This is I think you support Rangers your whole life. If they don't feel that passionate about it, where are we getting this thing that we can sell? John Swinney, I'm paying £53 a fucking ticket for that game. The Celtic fans will be paying more than that. They're £60 probably for the Brimlin on Sunday. We're putting money into the economy. 1/100th of the Scottish population attends an Old Firm game. So John Swinney's in there just slagging the shit out of it. There's only a few dozen, but actually maybe 200 Rangers fans tops on the pitch out of the 40-odd thousand we had at the game. But we're actually paying into this. We're paying for it. Well, you're getting paid to sit about committees and what have you and going to telly to slag it all off taking zero responsibility for the fact that we sell this as a product. This sells Scottish football. This is bringing money to the Scottish economy. It's one of the few places you can actually go and not be on. Folk are on drugs at the fact, but they're not doing the coke and all that, and they're drinking the wee half bottles of Buckfast. But the price of attending football is a kind of middle class, but it's middle class prices. It's a lot of money involved, and there's areas where going to football every week, you're seeing that it's like the equivalent of having a membership for the golf club. You've really got your life together. You're a bit of a snob if you get the money for a season ticket to go on a supporters bus and stuff like that. It's seen as being quite a. You should just be on the drugs, on the heroin like everybody else. You should be on the bevy. You should be, just getting wasted all the time like everybody else. But going to the football is a bit of an investment. It's a healthy way. Like Alan McGee, Creation Records, he's talking his drug problem. The way he solved it was get addicted to get back to his Rangers addiction, get back to being frenetic about Rangers all the time. This stuff saves folk. It hurts people as well. A lot of folk, it pushes them over the edge. But in the reality of Scotland, a lot of stuff going on in Scotland, the life for a lot of people, football is a great thing, and the fans who make that a spectacle. This is the first time in nearly 50 years of watching Rangers at Ibrox that I've seen our fans on the pitch in that kind of manner. You're welcome. Thanks for acknowledging the fact that we really must have been pushed right to the edge, really must have been provoked to just have to go on and just chase the Celtic fans back into their stand, and then we all went back home. But this is it. They then turned right at the end. I can't believe this. I can't believe what's happening. That we've ramped this game up and the significance of every game, and that the fans must have a kind of do or die attitude towards it. And then some have actually taken it literally. I can't believe that. The whole thing lasted about 3 minutes. Celtic fans threw the flares back at us, and both sides kind of threw the same two flares back and forth at each other. When I left Ibrox over an hour after the final whistle, the police presence was huge in my walk back to the car. The supporters bus still held up. Rangers supporters bus was still held up on Helen Street. There's hundreds of police vans, and there was a convoy of police vans coming up and down Shield Hall Road, all packed with police. This is, I say, about an hour after the game. But before the game was weird too. I mentioned this in my post-match reaction. I ended up being 5 minutes late for the game, because I thought I'll go and park where I used to park when Celtic had the full Brimlin, which, at my age, it was 8 years ago, since 6 or 7 years since they last had a full allocation of the Brimlin. So that was life. That's what it always was. 2 Old Firm games a season. I had my place to park for the Old Firm games, and then I could park in a different spot closer to Ibrox. And I couldn't get parked here because it was absolutely rammed. There was a bus lane. One of the bits I thought I could park in was actually a bus lane, but it's also totally rammed with parking all round Govan or in Ibrox. I think everybody was bringing their motors. But I couldn't see a lot of Celtic. I saw Celtic fans walking through Govan, the actual town centre of Govan, but then I just had to give up and go back and park in my usual spot, and it was deserted. There's no Rangers supporters about now. I was running a bit late, but I still managed to get to Ibrox about 12 minutes before kick-off, and the queues are snake-to look. You see the shots from the drones above Ibrox in Premier Sports coverage just at kick-off. It's packed inside, the teams take the pitch, and you can see the kind of queues snaking all across Edmiston Drive. I'm in one of them. I'm no inside. And I was walking down Edmiston Drive, swearing to myself, if you saw a massively morbidly obese old guy walking down Edmiston Drive, cutting through all the queues to get to his turnstile on Sunday, shouting and swearing at the top of his voice at nobody. That was me. I was fucking losing my shit because I thought I was going to miss 5 minutes of this. And I did miss 5 minutes of this game because it was so slow. And this is because it looks like a picture of the 1930s. Oh, it's packed in the stadium. The Old Firm. Look at the draw that they are. There is a massive draw in terms of paying customers. And it looks like the 1930s turnstile. It is the same turnstiles we had since the late 1920s. The same building. It's not the same turnstiles. That's the problem. It's because of the QR codes. It's because of a modern system of turnstile that the crowd still stuck outside the Rangers crowd. Now, the Celtic fans, we know what they were up to. And the Celtic fans, I'm not going to stick up for them after the way any Celtic fan was mistreated at Ibrox. I don't want to see it mistreated by the police, what they did in the Brimlin Road stand. And I know it's no group responsibility or anything like that, but also the othering of us, the victim blaming after what happened to us in Seville in the Europa League final in 2022 that I've had ongoing, coming onto the podcast all the time, making references to being hydrated and all that kind of stuff, and fucking scumbags. So I'm not going to stick up for what the Celtic fans, but there was no Celtic fans. I know that the Rangers and Fan Advisory Board was talking about clashes with Celtic fans on Helen Street, where our buses are parked. But when I was coming up, there was nothing. It was deathly quiet. It was really weird, because it used to be, in fact, the bit I usually park in, when I would come up that way, I'd have to walk through Celtic supporters, because the whole kind of west of the stadium was taken over by the Celtic support. But it just wasn't, they weren't about anywhere. I think we're getting kind of kettled into that one wee access road off Brimlin Road, and they're coming up that way as like the normal small supports that are going into the corner between the government and the Brimlin would get. I think that's maybe what happened with them, but I never saw any Celtic fans at all on my way to the game, except in the immediate environs of Ibrox. But I think they've been kind of treated badly by the Poles. I think the Poles are trying to put them off the whole experience, basically. But the QR codes, it's trying to get in, and that creates tension, because there's folk who can't work the QR code thing. They can't work the reader. They've either got the nightlight on their phone, or they haven't enlarged the QR code enough, and there's folks shouting on it, and it's like, fucking just get in and not. So that puts pressure on the stewards, who are then really tempted just to let two young guys push in together, go through the same way. So the QR code thing is not working. That needs to be looked at. But I was walking down that queue looking at myself. I can't ever approve of that kind of behaviour that we saw at the end of the game from Rangers supporters on Sunday. Going on the track, that's wrong. Going on the pitch, that's really wrong. Attacking other fans, that's beyond the pale. But defending our players and our fans from being attacked by preemptive action, that's totally understandable. And in a complete failure of policing stewarding, perhaps necessary. There is no way that was what was going through the minds of most of the Union Bears. No, but they're responsible for the atmosphere. They're responsible for defending the good name of Rangers. No, they're just wanting to have a go. You're on our pitch. That's incitement. We are going on there to even that up. But that's how it works. That's a necessary evil, if you like. And I was glad of it. I'll be honest. I was glad. I wasn't celebrating it. I wasn't actually glad, but I was relieved. The thought that our fans wouldn't respond to that wouldn't be dealt with. The Celtic fans coming on the pitch. I'm sorry. I know how it works in real life. It would never stop. It's what happens. And there's, perhaps kind of 49 years, and that's the first time I've ever seen this at Ibrox, that it happens now after what we experienced in the last games of 2014-15 and 2015-16 is absolutely no surprise, and no one listened to me when I said there would be trouble because of this big allocation. So I'm sure no one is listening to me now when I say, yes, I wasn't cheering the Rangers fans onto the pitch on Sunday, but I certainly wasn't about to get on the pitch myself either, but I was totally silent from the final penalty until I started my post-match pod. But when I saw Celtic fans on our pitch, when I saw the Celtic fans had been kind of cleared off our pitch, I wasn't unhappy. And when I saw them getting chased, back into the Brimlin, I was kind of relieved. Something that can't be allowed to go any further. I know in life, to take responsibility for my actions, and there's certain times when I can't be surprised that I've had a smack. I've certainly had, especially when I've paid for that smack and the spanking. Oh, that's a different podcast, sorry. But some actions, some attacks are purely defensive, and even when they're not defensive, sometimes they're kind of justified. The police wanted this to happen. Celtic and the SFA ensured it did. The Rangers fans who went taking responsibility, the Rangers fans who went on the pitch, they will be arrested. I know the balaclavas and that one, but they will be found and they'll be arrested. I've seen the way that the police, I've seen it firsthand. I used to go and I still do my pod during the Brimlin, except when the Brimlin's been taken over by Celtic fans and when it's cut off to Rangers fans, Brian Graham. I've seen our ground there, and it used to be the Union Bears would be in the Brimlin. I was around there one day and the police horses were going under. If you know the Brimlin standing, it's like a kind of portico outside. There's an overhang, from the offices that are up above at the back of the actual football stand. So this kind of overhang thing. The police horses the mounted police were bending down, so the police horses could go in and charge in through those very doors that the Celtic fans were charging through. You saw the video of that on Sunday. And I remember I was recording it, and a wee boy from Union Bells was like, "No, don't record it, mate." So I deleted it the film right in front of him, because he says they'll just use it against us. They'll use it to identify Rangers supporters, even though so they're fucking charging into and it happens every week. So I know how they get treated. They will be held responsible. They'll get arrested. They'll get football banning orders. They will pay the price, so that they are taking the responsibility. But I don't think the response. The game's in our stadium, but Jesus Christ, what could we do? We were forced to take the Celtic support in there, and that is it. That's my last say on this. I doubt that'll be in any way true. I'll probably have to. So I'm going to go now and have a pint with a Celtic fan. Actually, I'm going to go have a pint with a Celtic fan. And I actually had last night's meal was made for me by a Celtic fan as well. So my wife's pal, she was away having dinner at her pals, and she sent me. They were having beef burgers. Just somebody she works with, and after, and she sent them. But and I've gave her. She's a Celtic fan as well. But and so she's sending me. I'm eating Celtic, and I tested the burgers, make sure they weren't poison. No, they were fantastic. So it's no. I'm no one of these. I'm not into the whole thing of it's black and white and user. It's user horrible and we're all innocent. I hope I've expressed that throughout most of the pods I've done on this podcast, but I feel as if this time Rangers are getting it in a way that it just isn't deserved. It's a characterisation, it's an othering, and I would just like to say that it's getting out of hand, and the very fact that Celtic wanted this allocation and the police let it happen is, I think they need to take responsibility for this shit as well. That's me. Right, folks, I'll talk to you Friday, Saturday, whatever, about actual football, and then we'll preview our game against St Mirren, where I don't know how. I mean, the chief executive that we're taking on board has been allowed to let Stephen Robert, their manager, go, and is he going to get in a deliberately shit caretaker manager to help Rangers win this? The fix is in, bloody Masons. You know what they're like. But I'm going to talk to you about the actual football, the actual game itself between ourselves and Celtic on Sunday. I'll do a debrief of that and then build up to the game against St Mirren on Sunday. Everybody, chill.